Okay, class, I think we're ready to get started. Hello.
Hello.
All right, we're ready to get started tonight. I know everybody's probably ready to go home if you're tired as I am and probably tired as Katie is. Tonight we have, it's probably not going to work. Yeah, it should be the side buttons.
That's good to record.
I hit record. I did hit record, yeah, so we don't have to do it in 2 or 3 parts. Now, last time our internet went out too, so that caused some problems. So I'm hopefully that the internet will stay on. Well, anyway, while she's fighting with the clicker, I just put a new battery in it. I think that's maybe why I didn't.
You buy a new person. Buy a new person.
I can try to put another battery in it. Okay. Okie dokie. All right. Tonight, our Master Gardener class is on best management practices for woody ornamentals. So we're going to talk about tree planting, shrub planting, maintenance, pruning, all that good stuff that goes along with everything, with all that, with trees and shrubs. And so tonight we have Kathrine Killebrew. Kathrine is our city forester for the city of Clarksville. And so we work very closely together. I think we're the 2 certified arborists in Clarksville.
Tree ladies.
We're the tree ladies.
That's what they call us.
So we tag team and double up. Now it's working. It just clicked. And things tend to go weird. There we go.
You never know.
If it worked for me, it won't work for you.
What do you do?
I hit the side.
Oh, you're special.
So, all right. Well, welcome, Katie. Thank you. And take it away.
Okay. Can everybody hear me? I'm naturally loud, so sorry if I get too loud. Can't help it. Talk about some of the best management practice for planting ornamental plants tonight, and that includes trees and bushes. Some of the considerations before planting. Always remember that fall is probably generally about the best time to plant anything. And it's extremely important to water things, especially right now because it's so dry. Generally get October, November, and usually dry months. And there are a large number of plants killed between leaving the nursery being planted in landscape because of its handling. Start by avoiding windburn and plant desiccation and the cover plants tarp during transport. Those are probably some of the best, 4 best points that I know of. And generally, what happens is it starts with the place where we buy the plants. I've gone to Lowe's, Carla's gone to Lowe's, Home Depot, whatever, and half the plants there have either been dried out 2 or 3 times and they look strange and look weird. Make sure that your selection of plants, look to make sure it's, you can always pull them out of the pot. You can look at the roots of them. Nobody's going to arrest you for that. I do it all the time. I know they get irritated me because I'm always jerking them out, looking at the very ends of all the plants. I want to make sure they're not having any girdling roots. Doesn't have any little critters on the roots or anything on the greenery. Sometimes I've noticed that they're not they don't remember to water them a lot. I'll go through there and I feel so sorry for them. I just want to say, hey, I'll do it for free if you let me water them. They're really crying, but I don't think they'd like that. But a large number of plants are killed between leaving the nursery and getting them home. And you just got to remember to do the watering. And also, I laughed the other day, I saw this guy going down the road. He had 2 or 3 trees in the back of a pickup standing straight up. Woo! Like doing 60 miles an hour. I'm like, well, if that tree makes it home, it's going to be a miracle. And it's going to be really stressed out by the time he gets it home and he plants it. So, yeah, you're supposed to tarp. I'll always lay mine down with the burlap or the pot facing the back of the cab. And then that way the trees are going this way. And then I just throw a tarp over the top of them. So, but he only had a couple of trees, but I still throw a tarp for him. Keep in mind that most recommendations on planting and watering change with time, and our knowledge of 2 critical areas has proved over the size of the year, or proved over the last few years, the size and depth of the planting hole, and the use of amendments and backfill soil. I plant a lot of trees. We do a grant called the Tennessee Agriculture Enhancement Program grant each year, and we get anywhere from 50 to 100 trees. They're big. We have an ordinance that says you must at least put a 2 caliber tree in wherever we plant. And generally the 2 caliber tree in a burlap is roughly anywhere from 300 to 800 pounds a piece. It takes 3 of us to wrangle that sucker in the ground. And it's generally covered up with burlap, and it's generally got the basket on it. Please, if you ever plant a burlap tree, remove the basket and the burlap. There's so many that have been planted around Clarksville. Matter of fact, we were doing our Wacky Wednesday last Wednesday. First thing I asked the master gardener was like, y'all see anything wrong with this tree down here on the bottom? And they looked. And I finally pointed to the piece of wire that was sticking up out of the ground. I said, this tree's big and it's still got the wire and the basket and everything probably was on it. So, you know, contractors don't know how to plant trees. We do. And they'll just take them in the whole tree and you'll just throw it in the hole, throw some dirt over it and just let it go whatever. And when you do that and you don't unwrap it and you don't take the burlap off and you don't take the wire basket off, you're going to have your tree start making girdling roots. And eventually it will die. It might get some size to it before it does, but eventually it's going to die. So, and then when you're actually digging the hole too, remember the slope the sides of the hole, so new feeder roots, top 12 inches of soil have most room to grow. That's always really important. And you should roughen the sides of the edges of the hole, especially in high clay soil. We have a mini X, which we dig most of our holes out with. We tend to glaze our holes, so we have to go back with a bar and actually unglaze those sides of those holes. Because if you don't, then it's going to make a slick waterproof barrier. And when you go to water that tree or it actually rains on it, that water is going to sit in there and it's not going to percolate through the soil like it's supposed to. So make sure to rough up the walls of your glazed hole. And also your roots have difficulty penetrating the walls of a glazed hole. They'll just sit there. And then of course, when the water's on top of them, they'll rot and there's nothing you can do. So it's real shiny. So like if you dig out your hole and the sides of it looks really, really shiny, that's glazed looking. And of course, the soil that we have here in Clarksville, that wonderful red soil or clay that I always call it, it gets really glazed. And once you glaze it, it's like packing it and you can't get water to go through it then. So,
what do you mean by slope the sides of the hole?
Here's where you're sloping the sides of your hole. If that helps you a little bit. That hole there is a little shallow and wide, and it's not deep in the root ball, so it's actually good. You don't want to dig your hole too awful deep because you don't want to have to keep backfilling this right here. You actually want that tree to actually fit the hole. And the way I like to do it is I like to take my shovel and I'll measure the root ball on the tree with the shovel. I'll hold it up against the root ball, and then I'll go over to my hole and I actually measure the shovel against the hole to make sure I've got the right size hole actually dug for that. So, and then you can use opposing stakes if you want to. I try not to stake any trees for downtown the city because I know what's going to happen. There's going to be somebody that's going to either trip over them and call me and be mad, or somebody's going to run over them with a lawnmower, or something's going to happen. So I generally just take, and I got some wooden stakes that I'll get from Bill's Wholesale, and I'll actually drive some through the root ball, which you can do. 2 on each side or 1 on each side, however big your tree is. It works. It's better than stakes. You can leave just a little bit at the top to remember that you have dug in there. You can drive it all the way to the ground. They'll rot. So it'll be okay. This is a picture of a tree. It's got the feeder roots all the way past the edge here of the canopy. Just don't think because you're out digging around your yard that you're not going to. Most people think that a tree, I guess, has a taproot like a carrot, and that's not the truth. The feeder roots on a tree go way out past the edge of the tree itself. There's a lot of people that's like, well, I'm just going to put a flower bed here and I'm going to dig around the outside. Be careful of your tree roots. if you do cut through tree roots, try to be careful, you know, because you don't want to kill your tree. I see this a lot with the city. I'll give you an example. Y'all been past Swall Lake Golf Course, have you? Seen all the pine trees are there? Gas and Water decided they were going to trench the other side on the golf course and run a piece of pipe all the way through there. They weren't supposed to trench it. They took a trencher, cut through all the roots on one side. And so what happened last March, we had a great big windstorm and a lot of those pine trees got windthrown because they actually cut through the root system on one side. I told them, but you know, you have to make people listen.
I noticed that a lot of the new trees that they planted are dead.
At the golf course?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you why, because I went down the other day and somebody's putting glue around them so they don't have to weed eat them. So I lost my mind. Yes, I did. And they're going to have to pay for some more trees because that was done on a grant and it's got my name on it. So that's been addressed. And you're right. You cannot, and they did just went around each tree with glue because they don't want to have to, you know, weed eat around them. I don't get it. You know, I can only do so much until teach people and then you can't get them to do anything else. Here's an example of a proper hole. This hole was shallow and wide rather than narrow and too deep. I would rather dig it a little bit bigger around the outside than I would actually making it way too deep. Because if you have to keep backfilling, you know, it's not good. You know, you want something for that tree to grab a hold of once you turn those roots and all roots and all the rope loose. This one's just got rope around it, I noticed. It doesn't have a basket, but it may have it up underneath the burlap. Sometimes different nurseries do different stuff. Here's one that's planted wrong. What do you see wrong with it? Too deep. What else? Burlap on it. And what else they leave on it? The rope. I see this a lot. Here's another incorrect one. They actually did some backfill soil instead of ground level. The soil rained the whole water and they mulched to retain the water, or mulched to retain the moisture, but they didn't take off the burlap. It was loosened, but it wasn't removed. They backfilled it with soil. What happens when you backfill with soil? Does anybody know? If you have to backfill one with soil, the weight on them, eventually when you start watering them, will push this down, and then that whole tree will go down and be planted too deep. That's why we try to be very, very careful about how deep we plant them. Your planting depth is very important. Make sure you identify that trunk flare. The trunk flare is right there at the edge. You can see where all the roots start coming out. Spread at the base of the tree. You want to get just slightly above that when you plant your tree. Because if you don't, those roots actually hit the surface, they'll forever be at the top. You'll have sometimes poorly drained soil. This happened to us. Y'all know where the fire station is on Needmore Road? I don't know what station it is. I think that's station 10. So it used to be an old pig farm. There was a couple of 100 acres there. And I topped the hill one day and all the trees had disappeared. And of course, you know, I forgot about driving, about ran off the road. It's like, where'd all my trees go to the fire station? I mean, there were some big trees, they were huge, big walnuts, big oaks, everything else. And that whole subdivision, they'd start, you know, they were burning, slashing, you know how they do all subdivisions here in Clarksville. I was like, oh my goodness. And then I noticed that they had taken all the topsoil off. I said, well, there goes my topsoil. So when we went to replant those trees over at Station 10 in the back, we had no topsoil whatsoever. So we had to put those trees in plain old clay soil. They're not doing very well. We have babied them, we have mulched them. That some people say you shouldn't put amendments in the soil, but I think because that topsoil had actually been removed, that maybe we should have added some topsoil, maybe some type of soil amendments to get it started. They're not doing the best right now, but we keep kind of babying them along. We planted 26, I think, to start with in the back. And we had to do it for wind barriers because the firemen said the wind, because there's no trees there, it's horrific. And it is. We were standing out there about freeze that day we were planting all those trees. And then we planted another one on one side, another wind barrier on the other side, so they wouldn't have to look at the school and a bunch of those apartments that were over there. But it's poorly drained soil. All the topsoil got scraped off. We dug the holes right and everything else, but I don't know. It's one of those things you do this. You know, you can only do so much. In poorly drained soil, of course, you dig the hole 1 to 2 inches, 3 to 5 centimeters, shallower than a root ball. And when you do this, it raises roots high enough to let the water drain away from the roots. Repairing the hole. Then after, you know, of course, planting, cover the exposed the root ball with mulch because you don't want all that to show. And you should use that technique for any of your other plants also, your azaleas or anything other that's susceptible to root rot. And really most soils, your plants can be set on the ground, then a well-drained. Go back. That's Carla's stuff. I don't know where that went. Anyhow, they need to be washed to see if they're going to need water. If you've got a well-drained soil and it's mounded around the roots, that means your tree or your bush or whatever it is you planted can actually get drier quicker. So be careful about mounding your soil up over the top of your roots. You want that soil to be level with that flare. And please do not volcano mulch your tree. I'm sure y'all have seen it. CEMC is the worst offender. I'll go run over there every time they do their trees. I fix it, and then you turn around and do it again. Street department does my trees down at City Hall. I'll come through and they volcano mulch. I'll dig them out again. And it's a battle. The mulch out around there, it's called volcano mulching. What it does is it sets your tree up for failure. If you take the base of your tree and you put that much mulch around the base of your tree and you keep it wet, your tree will rot at its very base. And you will not have a good viable tree. So make sure that you keep the mulch on the ground about 3 inches, wide, about 3 inches or 3 inches deep is what I do.
So can I ask you a question? Well, it's kind of commenting in question. So we're not originally from here, but we are originally from do that as well. But then coming out here, it's all these mounds of mulch around the trees. We thought maybe it was something with the climate here that you needed to do that. We haven't done that to any of our trees. So you don't do that. These people are ignorant.
Yeah, they do it just because they can. I guess, and most of your landscapers do it, and it's like topping trees. It's like it catches on fire. And then the whole neighborhood tops their trees because I think that's the thing to do. Topping trees is bad also. So don't volcano mulch them and don't top them. That's the 2 worst things you can actually do for your tree. And then of course, when you're adding all that mulch around those trees, your volcano mulch, they can't get the air that they need. And so the roots will start coming up through the mulch. And when you remove that mulch back, you can see all the feeder roots come up through the mulch. Get a chance, go downtown to City Hall, you know, pull back the mulch and see what you can see. You're going to see feeder roots coming straight up through that mulch. I can only dig it off so quick and they keep putting more back on there. So, you know, it's a fight. Everybody's got a job with the city and mine's planting the trees and you know, trying to keep them mulched as quick as much as possible, but then the street department goes, well, let's add more, you know, so I have to go dig it out again.
You said 3 inches mulch, 3 inches deep. But you also said 3 inches wide. That's not.
I mean, 3 inches, 3 feet wide. I'm sorry. You know, you can do it a little wider if you want to. I mean, that's up to the person, and that's up to what your landscaping criteria is for your yard. You know, some people will do it, you know, big wide areas. Some don't. Yes, ma'am.
Are you saying that you would do a volcano and you got the air would that make you?
No.
Okay, how would you know that?
If that flare is exposed, I would put a minimum amount of mulch around it. If you do have a flare exposed, you don't want it to get wet and have that mulch hold against it because it just keeps it damp. Just expose the flare and kind of pull the mulch away from it.
In a situation with the green soil, what would you think?
With a poorly draining soil, what did that go to? You just want your what I explained, your water to be pulling away from your tree. You don't want that water to be held against that tree. So, I mean, it depends on the soil type that you got, but you want it to definitely drain. I mean, I've I've gone to people's houses and I'm like, you care if I use this golf? I've got a golf stick. And the guys at work laugh at me because I took the end off of it and I sharpened it. And that's how I found all the caverns underneath trees, and the roots go bad. I just take it and I'll do this around the tree, all the way around it, you know?
Hey, Catherine.
Sometimes I can find holes, which is, you'll know you have Ganoderma, which you know that if you have voids up underneath that root system on that tree, that tree's got a disease and it's gonna die. I mean, I can poke it and then all of a sudden that golf stick goes halfway into there. I'm like, this is a bad sign. So, and then I can take the end of that golf stick and kind of pick at the tree if it's a little bit too big for me, places I can't reach, kind of figure out, you know, what's going on with the bark, pick it off in places, kind of poke the tree a little bit. I always tell people, don't be scared. I'm just kind of looking at the tree. I'm not gonna hurt her, you know. They're like, go ahead, you know. I can kind of, you know, test all the flares, make sure they're good. You know, I can kind of gauge also how hard the soil is. You can do the same thing with a screwdriver. If you can take a screwdriver and you can put it in there and it's really good, comes in and out easy, just like my golf stick, then you've got good draining soil. So if you don't, you might have to make some amendments. I mean, I hate to say it, but we've done it with some trees where they've had the roots exposed in some of the parks. I've mixed up some sand, some perlite, some gardening soil, and I've gone through and tried to cover some of the roots up, but you can only do it like 2 to 3 inches at a time on the tree.
Hey, Catherine.
You can't just do it all at once. And it kind of keeps the flares from getting chopped up by the mowers.
How often would you do that? Like, how much time between like adding?
Every 6 weeks, something like that.
Oh, that's.
Yeah. You know, you just kind of got to look at it and gauge it. A lot of that is, I've noticed around Clarksville is where people love to get their grass really, really low. I guess it's, people like that 3-inch cut and it blows all the soil off the tree. So a lot of people, I tell them, if they're going to fix this tree, you can't come back and keep blowing the soil off of it. You know, take a weed eater and kind of lightly go across the top of it if you get some grass or something coming back, but try to keep the lawnmower off the tree. You know, 4 inches is what I mow mine at, and my tree roots are not exposed. They're still underneath, they're underneath the soil. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're going down and standing up. I'm not running over them with a lawnmower. I'm not gouging them. I went to one lady's house. She's like, I think my trees are dying. I got out and looked at them. All her tree roots had gone straight up. Of course, they were silver maples, and they do that. But her husband was ex-military. Nothing wrong with military. We're all in the military.
Yvonne.
And he was mowing at 3 inches, and he had cut through her root system and blowed all the soil off. And I was like, yeah, I hate to tell you this, you know, I hate to be the harbinger of bad news. I'm like, the tree's dying because, you know, you cut all the root system off. And she's like, what can I do? And I'm like, wait, try to work with them. I said, or you can just have them removed. And so she was going to work with them. The last time I saw them, they were okay, but you know, it's you can only try so much. So it's kind of like playing God sometimes. You try to fix something, and then sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So, yeah. Anybody see anything wrong with any of this?
All this, that's gonna capture all the water and just run out that tree.
Yep. It's a great big old, I call it a donut pile.
The negative volcano.
Yeah, it's a negative volcano. And I guess somebody had the great intentions, and I see it all across Clarksville, where people build up the soil around it. That way, when you pour water into the tree, it'll hold all that water and seep it down in there. Best thing I found out to do is get you a 5-gallon bucket, drill some holes in it, put your 5-gallon bucket full of water in there, set it beside your tree, fill it full of water. And then it gets 5-gallon water that's seeped down into it from the holes on the bucket. That's the best way to water a tree. You just, I would personally smooth this mulch out, make it a little bit bigger. I would take up the stakes. Notice the wire. Now they did do that part right. A little piece of hose. You think they're going to remember it? Yeah. Has anybody been to the racetrack over on Wilma Rudolph Boulevard and seen those trees? How long's the racetrack been there now? 3 years, 4 years? They still got the wire on them. They still got the posts on them. And I just want to reach over there. It is driving me nuts. I want to remove all that stuff off those trees because it's starting to grow into them. So, nobody's checked them. I guess whoever does the lawn or the grass or whatever, I guess it's not their circus, not their monkey, so they don't check that part. They just mow the grass. But, that's what you'll get. You get a lot of people that'll stake a tree and will walk off and leave it. And then what happens, it all grows into the tree. And I've even seen where they've put the metal stake right next to the tree. It's a real eye opener when you're working for the city of Clarksville and you're down there on one knee with a chainsaw and you're sawing a tree that has eventually died, and all of a sudden your chain comes off and whips past your face because you just pulled into one of those metal posts that's got into the tree. That's an eye opener for the day. You look around your partner and go, whoa. But people forget about the post. So it's easier to go ahead and go to Bill's Wholesale, get the wooden stakes, stake your root balls. You can stake them 2, 3, 4, however you want to do them. We did ours on our last grant over at Riverview Cemetery because I needed some trees over there for the windbreaks. And we put stakes through those. They have moved a little bit, which you want a tree to move just a hair because it actually stimulates the hormones in it, makes the tree grow a lot better, and it actually makes the roots adhere to the soil better. You don't want that tree to just be rock solid still. You want the wind to blow it. That's good for the tree. Funny on the side, I had about 20 or 30 trees in my orchard roughly when I lived out in Palmyra. And I had a neighbor, she was 92 years old, Miss Rowland, Miss Annie. And I saw her son carrying across the bridge home one day, and then I heard the truck turn around, and I thought, oh, here she comes back. She seen me plant a couple of these trees. She gets out of the car, she's got a little rag around her head. I thought she was so cute, little tiny lady. And she said, you're planting the trees wrong. Well, yes, ma'am. I'm going to argue with a 92-year-old lady. I said, what am I doing wrong? She said, well, she said, you need to go over and get some of them big rocks. And you throw them down that hole. I was like, those big limestone rocks over there? They were next to the street. She said, yeah. And I said, why? And she said, well, she said, with the way the wind is down through here, because we lived in a hollow at the time. And she said, the wind's going to blow them trees sideways. I said, okay. And I done planted 2 of them. And, but she stood there and I was like, well, she ain't going to leave. I got to do what she's telling me to now. Yeah. You know how little ladies are. I'm the same way as you get older. So I put a bunch of those big limestone rocks down there in the bottom of that tree, and I covered it, tamped it down real good with soil and everything else. And she was satisfied the next 4 or 5 trees, and she went on to the house. But I noticed next spring, the 2 I had planted without the big limestone rocks around the bottom were sideways. They had moved. She told me, she said, those roots will grab a hold of those rocks, break up the limestone and use it for nutrients and actually hold the tree down to the ground too. And she was right. Those trees are still straight to this stuff. The other ones are sideways. So she's a smart lady. I learned something from her. Notice anything about this tree? We got, what do they call that? That pea gravel? Yeah. Notice the tree? It's kind of dead, isn't it? What do you think happened? Now at work, I got to figure this out when I go to somebody's house. I got to figure out why their tree died. That could be part of it. Yeah. There's sun scald on the trunk. What else is wrong?
Well, they got that barrier around the pea gravel, so it's holding all that water in there.
That could be it. What else you say? Half of it's dead. What else? Notice the big ring. Looks like glide, doesn't it? Nobody wants to weed eat. So they added a little glide around the outside of it so they wouldn't have to weed eat. Pea gravel's great, but it holds in heat. And when you get to the extreme temperatures that we did this past year, that pea gravel heats up. And it heats up the base of this tree, and the heat goes about as high as here, and it will actually help to kill the tree. And that's why he's got parts of his bark is popping off too. It's getting too hot. You'll see people also, it's like, well, it's hot, our tree needs some water. Let's go grab the gator bags. Y'all seen the gator bags that you put around the tree? Okay, let's fill it up with water in 117 degrees. Let's boil the bark off. I've stopped several times and I'm like, get that off that tree. I said, you're boiling the tree. I mean, you can visually see where the bark's just like starting to wrinkle because it's so hot. So I always remind my guys when we have branch trees, I'm like, we gotta go take this off for summer because we're gonna boil the bark off of them. And then you'll see the 5-gallon bucket sit there and we'll do it with the 5-gallon buckets of water. So it takes a long time to water trees.
Are you talking about glyphosate Roundup? So that's, generally a contact. I wouldn't think it would hurt. It's not,
You'd be surprised. It looks like what happened here also is that whoever was spraying the glide, the wind is a little bit different over water areas and it come in contact with the side of the tree too. So, if you ever spray any type of glide, get you a Dixie cup. Tape it around on the edge of your, whatever it is you're spraying with. And that way that spray will stay down there instead of actually coming up with the air and blowing all over the place. And do it early in the morning. That way the wind is at a minimum or not at all, rather than doing it any other part of the day. That's what is part of the problem. I don't recommend rock. I've seen different types of rock. I've seen pea gravel. It's just not good for the tree. The tree does not do well. And then for some reason, the roots won't come up. You'll pull that gravel back and you'll see all those feeder roots start to come up. So I don't know whether it's the feeder roots are so hot or what's going on, but every time I've seen pea gravel or rock, you pull it back, roots are coming up.
Is a barrier like that acceptable? Is there anything wrong with that?
I wouldn't put anything around my tree,
Just the mulch
just the mulch.
next to the grass?
I don't like to put any barriers at all. You're gonna have, number one, if you got somebody mowing, somebody's gonna get a mow over, run a blade, or you're gonna have a trip hazard for somebody that's running through the yard. I'd rather somebody trip over some mulch and fall flat on their face than I would fall on that and cut themselves up. These things are made out of metal. If anybody's ever seen them, they hurt. Especially if you got them in a park or something like this one guy does. He's got a whole bunch of them. I don't know what's going on. I don't recommend them. Could he save that tree? Probably so. I would pull all that stuff out from around the tree. I would go through and I would prune all the dead stuff out. Put me in some mulch. I would water that tree extremely well to help get the glide out from around it. And it might come back the way it's supposed to come back. You just have to experiment with it. Sometimes you can save them, sometimes you can't. How many errors there do you spot? What's wrong with that one? Got the wonderful saucer down there in the middle, got the stake sticking out, hanging onto the tree. The actual hole for the root ball was too big. They loosened some soil. They didn't figure how big that the tree was, didn't measure it with their shovel.
Did they originally stake it in the wrong place? It's above the branches there?
Yep, they got it staked in the wrong place. I wouldn't stake them at all. I don't stake any of ours. I want ours to wiggle and move and do what they're supposed to do. Like I said, if you want to stake one, shove a stake through the root ball sideways. It won't move. Or grab you some limestone rocks. They'll stay there. Because Annie wasn't wrong, that's for sure. Loose soil too deep. Yep. Oh, yep. Forgot the trunk flare. See where it's above the grade? Or below, yeah, below the soil grade. Supposed to allow some sway from the trunk. Got mulch all the way up the side of the tree. And the hole's not as wide as what we recommend. It's more deeper than it is wide. Wide's fine, deep's bad. And the trunk's not protected from the guide wires. So they just stuck the wire on there. And if you don't check it, then it'll grow right into the tree and it'll kill it. When you're doing bed preparation and soil improvement, here's kind of like I was talking about where you can start seeing these root flares come out. Here's a piece of root here. You can kind of go through and you can add some mulch to it a little bit. Like I said, do it a little bit at a time. It's not going to hurt anything. It just takes some time.
Isn't that common now in the forest to see a lot of trees with the root flares over the tree?
but it's not common for them to be showing way over here. So, you know, in people's yards, yes, because like I said, we blow all the soil off of them. So then you got to do some soil improvements or some amendments. Always do a drainage hole test. You can always dig a hole, fill with water, see how long it takes to drain. It's kind of like when they do your house, do a perk test. Is the water going to sit there, or is the water going to take how many hours to drain? What's going to happen? Is it adequate for any of your landscape plants? If it takes more than 12 hours, you got bad drainage. So, you know, maybe it's a good idea not to plant there, or you may have to do some type of amendments at that point. I mean, who knows? And add organic matter. Organic matter improves the soil till, soil texture, water holding abilities, provides a weak negative electrical charge, decomposes. The nutrients remain in the soil. They're always available to the plants for uptake. In Tennessee, we've got municipal compost, we've got cotton gin waste, rice hull, poultry litter, well-rotted sawdust. We can use any of those type of commercial things to actually help repair a soil. And always remember the products must be well composted, and the uniformity of this practice varies between producers. Sometimes you can go to Lowe's and you can get a bag of compost and it's not all the way done like it's supposed to. And you'll still see cow manure in it, or it's kind of, I call it green. I don't know how you know. So it's not very good for for adding to your soil. It needs to sit there a little more longer. Uncomposted organic matter binds plant nutrients longer, and it's not suited for landscape. I've seen some people take compost that they've made in their backyard and it wasn't ready yet and it was still green and add it in. It's not a good idea. Wait till it's all the way done before you put it on your trees. Generally, it's not recommended to add organic matter to an individual planting hole. The structure and texture of the soil in the hole different from the surrounding native soil. That's where you're adding stuff and you really don't want to. This is kind of what we ran into over Station 10, was just plumb old red clay soil because we had no topsoil. We took a chance. We're still working with the trees. Like I said, they're kind of squirrely. But we thought maybe that, you know, if we didn't do any amendments, we were better off. I mean, I would hate to amend all that soil. They took off on great and they stopped. And when they hit the bad soil and just died all of a sudden because it's like it went black. So I just stuck them in plain old native soil and tried to encourage them to actually grow. They're still growing, but they just look strange. If you actually add organic matter, then the roots just want to stay within the organic matter and they don't want to branch out and go into the native soil. That's why you really don't want to add your amendments to your new trees. If you want to add organic matter, it's best to incorporate organic matter uniformly throughout the projected root zone as opposed to putting it in the planting hole. Give you an example. Blueberries. You have to go through and you have to do those a year before you can plant. Fix all the planting beds before you've got to get the pH right. You've got to get the soil right before you actually plant the blueberries. Anybody ever planted blueberries and got blueberries the first year and next year when they went, that's why you got to keep the pH soil. So even in orchard, it's best to figure out where you want your tree, get your soil prepared right, take another soil reading, make sure that it's right for the tree or whatever it is you're planting, blueberries or however you want to do it. Get your amendments correct, you know, make sure your soil's tilled up, work it all into the soil, get it going like it's supposed to before you plant some of your bushes and your trees, especially your blueberries because they don't like a high pH. So that's where your organic matter is very important. Purchasing plants. Like I said, 2 important points. One is to purchase plants from a reputable nursery or garden center. Lowe's is okay. Yeah. I was there today looking around and I was looking for a dogwood tree and I was like pulling them out of the pots, looking at them and I was shoving them back in, putting them on. She guys like, can I help you? And I was like, you got any better dogwood trees? He said, this is all we have. I said, okay. So they were horrible. They looked just about like that. So they've been in that oral thing and they've gone round and round and round. And I'm thinking, you know, I don't know if this thing's gonna make it or not. So I just didn't purchase them. So secondly, choose plants that will grow in a select area of the garden. Make sure it's the right spot. Please don't put the tree in the wrong spot. If you're not certain how big that tree is gonna get, go over here to Liberty Park. We've got 35 native trees. We've got more than that, but it's a certified arboretum with the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council. Look at the tree. Make sure, I had one day, she says, I'm gonna put a sycamore tree in my yard. I was like, you really need to go look at the sycamore tree at Liberty Park. She's like, is it big? It's like, it's big. So she called me a week later and she goes, you're right. No way. That sucker's huge. And I said, I told you. I said, you don't have enough space, you know? Pick the right tree, right place. You know, you can buy a smaller ornamental tree, service berries, dogwoods, something smaller that's gonna fit your yard if you don't want a huge 30, 40, 50, 60-foot tree. That's up to you. But, and I always remember not playing underneath electric lines. CDE doesn't like that. And they're gonna come cut your tree down in here if you do it, so don't do it. So,
I just had someone tell me about not planting it under the power lines, how far?
depends on what kind of tree it is. What kind of tree is it? That you're wanting to plant underneath there?
I saw houses, so it's more of a generic question,
Okay.
because I have. a list
Most of your
of-
native trees will get very big and very tall. I don't recommend planting any type of native tree underneath a power line or loblollies or pines or anything else that's gonna get over 30, 40, 50 foot tall. Because your lines, it depends on where you're at, are roughly anywhere from 30 foot off the ground. And you're gonna wind up with a tree, once CDE gets done with it, and it was really, really tall, it's just gonna have these branches sticking out like this, because the top of it's gonna be gone. Because they're gonna top that sucker if it gets up into their electric lines, and they can do that because they're a utility company. When you purchase your plants, inspect your leaves, your branches, stems, and roots, ensure the plants are healthy and have vigorous growth. If you're getting orchard trees, make sure you look for disease, for pests. It was Home Depot I went to 2 years ago. And I told the manager he needed to pull all of them off the shelf. I said, every one of them, I said, are diseased. I said, you cannot sell these. I said, you know, USDA says, no, you cannot sell a diseased tree. And he came out, pulled them all off. I told him, I said, you're gonna toss them, throw them in there, toss them, burn them, do something to them. But they all had black spot and fire blight, every one of them. And they were just giving it to the tree and that tree and that tree, and it was just going on down the line. So make sure when you look at your trees and you're thinking about buying one, make sure it's not diseased. And make sure it doesn't have any type of little critters on it you don't want on it, because they will eat your trees up. And check for the girdling roots. Like I said, you can pull them out of the pot, you can look at them, you don't like them, stick them back in the pot and walk off. You can always go somewhere else. There are more reputable places to buy them than Lowe's and Home Depot. Go to the real nurseries. And then sometimes you have to watch the real nurseries here around town, because they'll sell you something in a bigger pot that they got out of a smaller pot. That just happened to me. They took one out of a tree out of a gallon pot, stuck it in a 3-gallon container, didn't ruffle up the roots, didn't anything, just shoved it in there and put soil around it and expected, and sold it to me as a 3-gallon tree. But it was still it was in a 1-gallon pot. They were trying to make some money off of us. It was on a grant that I did, and I called the guy and I told him, I said, you need to come out here. You just flim-flammed me, and I am holding your check until you give me the right trees. So he had to bring me some trees. He was not happy, and I don't deal with him anymore. You know who I'm talking about, Pearl? So when to plant, best time to plant trees and shrubs is during the dormant season in the fall after leaf drop or early spring before the bud break. We start planting our trees last of October, and I won't plant, and the last one I'll plant will probably be the 1st of March. I want to be done by the 1st of March. And I won't plant any for the rest of the year. You want those roots to get established inside the hole. You want those roots to grab, you want them to get the right nutrients. You want them to hang on to the tree like they're supposed to. You want them to get enough water. You want them to get going before that summer bud break. And then, because if you don't, you're going to end up watering all summer long. I mean, you're going to end up watering anyhow. roots. You're gonna water more if you plant one in the spring or in the summer. It's like having a ball and chain. You're gonna be like, tree. You're not gonna get very far, you know, how many vacations you wanna go to, you gotta have your neighbor water your tree for you. You know, that tree's gotta be watered. So you want those roots established before the spring rains come, and you want that summer heat to actually stimulate that new growth, new top growth. Planting plants grown in containers or pots. Yes, you do need to have your nursery plants special handled to ensure proper landscape growth and survival. Before you take the tree and you remove it from the pot, make sure it's really, really moist, especially if you're looking at it wood. Remove the container or plastic bag from around the roots. If the container is out of fire pot, and it appears to be treated with preservative, remove it before planting. Don't be afraid to take cut any circling or girdling roots. Use a sharp knife to make 3 or 4 vertical cuts down the root system. I've done this before and I pulled it out of a pot, and I freaked one of my guys out one time, and I had a saw and I just went, God was just cutting it. And then you, of course, remember the bottom part, because the bottom part is just as important as the sides, because it gurgles around the bottom. He's like, you're gonna kill the tree. I was like, I'm not gonna kill the tree. You know, and I said, we're gonna all those wonderful little finger roots, and I said, we're gonna get it where it'll go through the soil like it's supposed to. And I said, it'll start sucking water and nutrients and everything else. And after he saw me do it, and they all lived, he's like, he started doing it. So I saw him. It was funny because when he was teaching some other guy to do it one day, and I was kind of watching, and he was just doing me great. Take this, fluff it up a little bit. I was like, here you go, you got it.
I have a question.
Mhm.
I don't know where I may have put this, but you're saying split down the sides, but
Mhm.
not across. So I feel like somebody told me to bisect it across the.
Oh, I've taken and done the bottom back and
Yeah,
forth,
okay.
and on the sides. I'll fluff it up, make it look like it's got wild looking hair.
So one thing like that I've come across is, so then once you start messing with that, then you don't really know the depth of the root ball, right? Because some of that stuff is gonna come off. So don't dig your hole until after you've done that,
Mhm.
because then you know,
Mhm.
otherwise you're gonna dig your hole too deep.
Right. Yes, I've done it before too. I'm just as, you know, sometimes we get our cart before our horse, or we'll get somebody helping us that doesn't realize what we do. And we'll turn around and it's like, oh, she done took all the containers. Oh, so, yeah, so.
I have one other question. If you didn't do that, and let's say you planted your tree this past weekend, should you dig it up and do that and then replant it?
How big is the tree?
Not that big.
I would,
You would?
I'd jerk it right out, shave it up, jam it back down in there and plant.
If you already dug it up once.
That should be third time.
This is gonna reveal a lot of problems.
Honestly, we've done it several times ourselves, because we forgot to do stuff, or say we did a riparian buffer one time, and we had one that, I don't know what happened. Oh, the root ball broke on it, and so we had to pick it back up. We had to fix it, stick it in the ground, and then after the rains came and it took it and washed it down the thing. Yeah, that was number 3. It's live. We replanted it. It worked. So. You know, just make sure before you take it up that you really water it a lot and get it really moist. So you don't, I mean, it's already stressed out. So, you know, you don't want to stress it out any more than what it is. But you probably could move it again. How much did you pay for this tree? Oh.
It's part of the group.
Oh, okay. Try and see. I mean, we've done them several times, especially when the wind got them or messed them up. Or,
See, when it was like clay, it's just like mud, right?
Mhm.
I watered it really good today. So tomorrow. Wow.
Wait till early morning or late
Yeah.
night. Yeah. Wait till it gets ready to rain and it's cloudy for a couple of days. That's the best time to do one. Yeah. We've done that too. Small balled and burlap call them B&B plants, or either hand dug or machine dug at the nursery, wrapped in burlap, secured with twine and pinning nails. Those nails really hurt when you're trying to get them out too, and you're gonna end up bloody. Wear gloves. The large ones are dug with a mechanical spade, placed in wire baskets in the nursery, and they can be very heavy. We get ours, like I said, they're 2.5 caliper, and sorry, tell me to walk. Sure is. They can be very heavy. We get ours, it actually comes in the back of a, oh, what is that thing called? Low boy. It's got a semi pulling it. That's how we get ours. I mean, those root balls are this big around a piece. It takes us a skid steer with a fork on the front, chained. We hook it around the wires and we pick it up like that to place each one of them next to the hole after we've already dug them. We pre-game. We dig all our holes first. We measure all the root balls. We take all the trees, we set them next to where we're going to do. We dig the holes, we get it right. And then we come through and we start planting them. So because you've got to pick each one of them up with a skid steer, place in the hole. It's going to take 3 people to do it. You're going to be dirty, you're going to be nasty, messy. When it's over with, I've sat on the side of a hole with my feet in the water when it was raining, trying to make sure we got them in the ground before it started getting hot. Yeah, cut the wire with a pair of bolt cutters. That's how thick that wire is. And make sure that they're good and wet, because that's what keeps that root ball together. And you kind of take the pins out, which are like little nails, slowly unwrap your burlap, because if you don't unwrap it very slowly and your whole root ball fails and falls out, then you have bare roots. Then you've kind of ruined the tree, and it's a 50-50 shot. The tree's gonna live or die. Some have lived, believe it or not. Some have died. We plant them anyhow and see what's going to happen. I'd say we have 98% rating on all of ours that we plant, unless somebody gets around with glider or runs over with a lawnmower. Well, that's not our fault. They can be, huh?
How many trees do you plant bare root?
None. The little seedlings? Yeah, I don't like to plant the little seedlings. We've done it in the past for Tennessee Tree Day and tried to plant some next to a stream or a creek or something, and we had it marked that we plant them there, and then somebody came through with a lawnmower and raised them all down several times. Now we did do a riparian buffer over at Trice Landing. You can go see it, and we did one at Billy Dunlop. And when we planted those 25 trees there, which were the big ball and burlap, we did go through, we put seedlings, bare root seedlings in from East Tennessee Nursery. And I think we put 175 seedlings in next to the river bank or to the stream bank to hold that in. So, and they lived, but you got to put them in there at the right time. You got to leave them alone. So I advocate for sitting those bare roots in there in the wintertime. I think we put those in January. We put those in. And they lived, pretty much all of them lived. So, and they're doing a very good job. But they're very heavy, the ball and burlap are. I'll give you, for instance, we had some volunteers help us with Trice Landing. Was Trice Landing? No, it was Billy Dunlop. We did that one. They were the ROTC from Northeast High School. And we had one little girl. I liked her spirit, but she decided, we told her, we said, need 3 people to get these trees in this hole, because when you get those trees ready, you've got to roll them in the hole, and the other person's supposed to catch them, you know, once they get in the hole, because if not, they'll bounce out and come back at you and grab you and hurt you. She didn't believe us. The tree, she didn't listen to us. She goes over and starts rolling a tree in there, and it goes in there and shit bouncing there. It grabbed her, flung her down in the hole, and we had to get the skid steer to get the tree off of her, because it landed on her pelvis, and she was yelling. I thought we were gonna broke her pelvis. But once it took 3 of us to chain the tree up, get it off of her. And she was a believer after that. She's like, hey, y'all, that tree's heavy. She said, don't try to get in there by yourself. And I mean, she was showing everybody how to roll that tree after it was done. Yeah, but it hurt. We had to do an incident report for her. But they can be heavy. I think we figured out those were about between 650 to 800 pounds that day. They were extremely large trees. So, well, that's the first thing I did was give them the safety stuff, and they don't listen. I tried. We're doing borrowing burlap, just kind of do it like you do a container, remove the roots, soil until the flare is exposed. Make sure you put cut off the burlap, the rope, and the wire. You're gonna have the existing grade over here. Make sure all this is, the root flare is not too high, make sure it's not too low. The root ball should sit directly on top of that undisturbed soil. So what you don't want to do is you want to make that shallow and wide still. You don't want to get that extra at the bottom where you got to keep backfilling it, once you made a mistake. And like I said, we'll take the shovel, stand it up beside the root ball. We'll measure how big it is, and then we'll take it and put it in the hole we've done. Make sure we're doing it to the right height. Hole should be 3 times as wide as a root ball with slope sides.
What do you do if you have a slope?
How much for slope?
Not much.
How much
Like if
slope
you're
on your
trying-
yard?
Hmm?
Slope on your yard?
Yeah.
You have to kind of work with it. You look at Smith Trahern, they wanted us to put some on the slope there, so we had to kind of work with the rope ball to adjust it to the slope. And then we went through and we staked it to the slope to keep it from moving. It kind of moved a little bit. We're hoping it's going to come back the other way because I really don't want to have to put any type of stakes in there. So, but if you look at Smith Trahern, I've got 2 on a slope facing McClure Street. So we're just kind of working with those. But you just kind of have to offset your tree to the slope and hopefully put it in full sun. That shouldn't make it where it leans or bends or anything also. So, they want to break. Talk for an hour. You want to break? Good.
How long are you gonna talk tonight?
How long you want me to talk? You want to go to bed?
No, I'm just saying that we gotta talk. We wanna wait for a break. We wanna talk till 8:30, then right now.
You know, how many slides were in this, bro?
That's just my opinion.
I don't either. 72, we're on 26. So we're almost half. Oh, wait. Okay, yeah. I was making sure I checked with y'all. Planting bare root plants. Roses, grapes, sold bare root without soil around the roots. Everybody has gone to Lowe's, grabbed the ones in little packages on the side. They're all bare root. Keep the roots moist if you're not going to install them immediately. Remove any packaging. I like to stick them in a 5-gallon bucket and put some water around them to keep them good and moist. And I'll actually put them in water 24 hours. Sometimes I'll put them in water 2 or 3 days before planting. So I want them to suck up as much water as they can before I stick them in the ground. I've actually done seedlings from East Tennessee like that too. And honestly, I've still got some I've had in the bucket for February. And they have roots all around the bucket. I didn't really yesterday. I went out there and it was like 5 or 6 seedlings in a 5-gallon bucket. It had rainwater in it. Boy, it's going on crazy in there. The tree's alive. So there's something to it. I mean, at least it stayed wet. So I took them and stuck them in some dirt, but y'all be afraid. I finally relieved them of their bucket. Yeah. I told my guys, I said, I thought we planted these. I thought you planted them. Why not? I didn't even go back here. It was just like 4 little ones. But yeah, they were alive, but as long as they were getting water, they were great. Here you can transplant established plants. You can plant, if you want to move a tree. I've done it before. I found a dogwood in the forest. Here's the dogwood person. A lot of people do this. About 6 months to a year before you want to move the plant, kind of make sure you know where the tree's going to go. I pulled one from the edge of the forest and put it in front of my kitchen window because I wanted to see the birds while I was watching dishes. That was my argument. You want to get a 10 to 12 inch root ball for every plant of caliper diameter measure on the main stem. So if you got a plant that's 2 inches diameter caliper, the root ball should be 20 to 24. So I think mine was wasn't very big. It's like 1/2 caliper. So what I did is I took a shovel and I went 6 months ahead of time all the way around the tree and I cut loose all the feeder roots. And then I went back and I cut them back some more in a couple more months. And then I took a tarp after I cut them all, and it was about December, I guess, is when it was. And Miss Annie down the street told me make sure the dogwood faces the same way it did when it come out of the woods, and she was right. You know, she stopped me again. She go plant that dogwood, make sure it faces the same way. So I marked north on the right side where it was facing. And I put it in front of the window, and the last time I was at the old house, the dogwood's big. It's grown. I mean, I never had any problems with it. Threw some limestone rocks at the bottom. I remember that part too. As long as you're doing it right, and I made sure I watered it really, really good. Now a lot of people have problems with dogwoods. My husband's grandmother said I had planted $600 worth of dogwoods, and not a damn one of them took up, is what she said. And she said I should have took that money and set it on fire. She's 86, so I would never say that. And I told her, I said, well, I can plant you some. She's like, no. She goes, if I can't do it, you ain't gonna do it. Okay. I guess she just give up. Dogwoods like a lot of organic matter. And I told her, I said, you didn't have enough organic matter in your yard. And I said, if you spread organic matter around it at least once or twice a year, I said, your tree would have been okay. They're heavy feeders. And they don't like full sunlight. They like partial sunlight. If you look at a dogwood, where's it generally out in the forest? It's an understory tree. So it needs so much shade per day. The one that I planted next to my kitchen window at the other house, it got 6 hours of sunlight a day. So it was perfect. So, but take that into account, whatever tree that you're actually pulling up or you're moving or whatever it is, make sure you got plenty of water, release the roots. Yours is different, you'll be fine. You just planted it. So, but I've had people who I've come to their houses, it's like, can I take this tree in my backyard and transport it to the front? And I've gone back there and this tree is like this thick. And I'm like, what are you thinking? You'll never get this tree up. Yeah. I'm like, if you really want to do all that, hope you got some help, but I'm not helping you. You move it if you want to. I'm like, cut it down and start all over again. And sometimes half the time the tree looks like it's half dead, they want to move. But it can be done. You can also draw a circle on the ground around the trunk. Draw another circle about 2 or 3 inches inside the first. And this is where you use your sharp spade, cut the blade into the soil, deep in the north and south quarters around the inner circle to actually break roots those feeder. You can do it anywhere from 3 to 6 months later. Repeat the process on the east and west corners. I've had different ways I've done it. I've done this side and left and come back to this side and done it, this side and done it. And it just depends. But you want to save those new feeder roots is what you're doing from developing from those silver roots by keeping them from the outer circle. So you want to keep them contained. So when you take your tarp and you actually get that tree up and you're pulling on that tarp, you've got some viable roots once you go back and you're establishing it again. You transplant them. It takes roughly about 3 to 6 months to get them right. I've actually moved orchard trees like that too, because I realized that I shouldn't put that orchard tree there. I should have put it somewhere else. I've done it. Then again, you got to go back and you got to do all your soil amendments and get it ready for that tree. So water the plant a couple days before you dig clean down the root ball. Make sure to keep your root ball intact. You don't want to get too close to the tree and ruin your root ball. When you pick it up, roll the root ball to one side, take your burlap or your tarp or whatever it is. My husband laughs at me because I got this, I call it my tree tarp. And he knows when I pull that tarp out, he's like, what are you moving? I'm like, a tree. I got 2 apple trees I planted 2 years ago that I'm going to have to do because he wants to build something there now. So I'm like, you told me that before when to put them, you told me to put them there. That's what I did. So we have the tree fight all the time. He's like, what do you got in your truck? Yeah, I think we all do it. Yeah. I went home the other day. I had 4 pecan trees. He's like, where do you think you're planting those at? In that bottom right there next to the creek. No, you're not. I can't see the creek. You don't need to see the creek. So when I told him, I said, I'm going to put those trees there. So we had an argument about that. I won. So anyhow, freezer handling is to reduce lifting and carefully roll your root ball into the tarp, drag the plant to the planting site, plant the tree or shrub according to the best management practices described. Don't get bigger than what you can handle. Your back will hurt you the next day, the next week. You know, that's why I like my little tarp. When I get something bigger than that. He laughed because I move rocks too. So I got all these landscaping rocks. So I found this piece of plastic. It was hard plastic. I don't know what it went to, but it had a hole in the middle. It's about 3x3. So I was taking my rock bar and flipping my rocks onto those, and I ran a chain in through it. I hooked it to my four-wheeler, and I was running them suckers all over the yard. And I showed him how I was doing it. He goes, "Well, that's pretty ingenious." So he was doing it to move a motor one day. I was like, "Ah, you like that?" That's it. I said, "Do it the girl way. That way the back don't hurt." Pruning at time of planting. It's not necessary to prune your tree when you plant it. I don't prune any of our trees or any of our bushes that I do with the city. I let them sit there. Mainly because the pruning removes those vital plant tissues that produce the hormones like the auxins that plant needs. The auxins are primarily stored in the shoot tips and stimulate both spring bud break and root growth. And removing those shoot tips can promote tall, leggy plants with bushy bases and delay bud break in the spring. I'll leave them alone. I don't prune our trees till the second year. That's only if I have to. Or I see a little dead spot in them or something else. I'll leave them alone. Now, the third year, it's game on. You know, I start going through because I want that tree to have a central leader instead of looking like a bush and, you know, coming out with 2 or 3 different central leaders. I want it to grow straight. I want it to grow strong. I don't want it to be a pruning nightmare. So I start pruning them and taking care of them and doing them about the third year. I don't add any fertilizer either until about the third year. A lot of times I don't add any fertilizer at all. I just leave it alone. Of course, we talked about the proper application of mulch is important. What's it do? It helps conserve water, maintains even soil temperatures, and inhibits weed growth. So you can do a 2 to 3 inch deep layer of mulch with a diameter about 3 to 4 times the diameter of the root ball. That's adequate for most plants. Depends on who it is. I have people that want to mulch all the way to the edge of the tree, you know, canopy. That's fine too. Less mulch may not control the weeds or reduce the moisture loss, and mulch more than 4 inches deep will limit water and air movement through the root system. So be careful, don't put too much and don't put too little. You know, you want to maintain as much moisture as you can, but you don't want to make it where it's so soggy that it kills your tree. Organic mulch can hold enough moisture to keep the bark continuing wet, causing bark decay. So don't let it come in contact with the trunk or stem of the plant. No volcano mulching. And if you want to do it, simply remove the mulch with your hand. I get my guys to be like, "Oh, let's fix this tree and remove all the mulch away from it with the shovel." Well, you just scuffed my tree. It ain't like you can put a Band-Aid on your tree and fix it. You know, then at that point, when you scuff your bark on your tree, you know, we can put Band-Aids over us, the trees can't. I mean, they can fix themselves eventually, but that sets them up from pests and also disease problems. So just reach down and move the mulch around with your hand.
Is there anything you can do besides using mulch?
You can not mulch if you don't want to.
I mean, if it's
moist.
There's a difference.
Mulching keeps it where it's moist. You want your tree in its first plant to stay moist in the first 2 to 3 years. If it doesn't, the soil will dry out, and if you don't remember to water it like you're supposed to, the tree will die. There are some people that don't want to put mulch on, you know, and you may be that person. But as long as you keep, you know, that tree wet and water it once a week, it should be okay. I've got one lady, she put hay around her. Hay was fine. I've got hay around my apple trees. Because I don't feel like running back and forth to Lowe's and buying mulch for, what is it, $5.97 a bag, which is ridiculous. So I've got some old hay. We had it around our camper last year to insulate our camper, and I took 48 things of hay and used them for my garden, and the trees and everything.
The other thing is, you don't use mulch, you're finding grass and weeds, which are robbing the tree of moisture.
Yes.
Does that only extremely significant in the first 2 to 3 years, or is this to the life?
You don't do it for the life of the tree. I just do it for the first 2 to 3 years. Yeah. I mean, if you're wanting something, you know, to look like, say you live like in a swanky part of town, and you want to look like everybody else's yard and look nice, you know, because they actually apply mulch and it looks a little bit better. You can do it. I mean, if that's what you want, you know, if you don't want to do mulch, you don't have to. So that's for 2 or 3 years, but I recommend mulch the first 3 years. Or some type of hay or something in there. Yes, ma'am.
Now, I personally have some pretty good stuff around the, making it get easier that I'm going to be around the bottom, to wrap. And at the same time, water and everything, using some of the recycled sort of rubber mulch, rings. And, you know, they hold up for a number of years and we pretty much better asphalt.
Yeah.
Run over. It works pretty well. What do you think?
I've seen them use them and that works. If you don't want to have to do, regular mulch. They'll run you about $9, I think, about like this. I've seen people use them. And then, if you don't want them later, you can just take them and pull them off and put them in storage. And that's up to you. Some people like mulch, some people don't. Some people like hay, some people like rubber rings. I guess some people like pea gravel. I've got some that like creek gravel. Recommend the hot rock, but yeah, pine straw, you're gonna mess with the pH on the tree. So, well, now they're great for azaleas. They're great for pine trees, azaleas. You can use them on blueberry plants. Something that the pH is a little bit higher, but I don't recommend them for a regular tree. It'll mess up the pH.
Just having them dyed mulch, I mean, red and black, like if it's black, is it gonna absorb too much? Stuff?
It can. Do you really want the dyed mulch that has some type of red, whatever in it?
They're really getting good mulch at Lowe's, and also to be like the dye stuff.
We get ours at the co-op, but we buy it by the 1 tons. We buy 2 or 3 cubic yards at a time.
The co-op has dyed.
Regular brown mulch. Mhm. And that's what we use is regular, just brown mulch.
I sent my husband.
The only thing I don't like about black, we use it for our adopter plots and stuff like that is if we have to end up cleaning it up or weeding or whatever it is, and you got to get down on the ground. You'll never get it out of your pants. I have tried every time. Shout, grandma's best stain remover, whatever it is, and you just ruin everything that you have. So unless you're going to put your grubbies on. So, I mean, you can if you like to dye it up. I've had one part, they like the red mulch. So it's like, you really want to put red mulch around it? Yeah, we want red mulch. Okay. I don't like it, but then you got to get down there and hand move it around and everything. And you're going to get down on one knee and you're going to ruin your clothes. So that's you. Every homeowner is different. Some like black, some like red. Like I said, some like pine chips, wood chips. Yes, sir.
So what do you recommend doing if you got the outer bark of a new tree?
Leave it alone. How about a scuff are you talking about?
Probably like that, maybe.
I'll be honest, we have scuffed a couple of trees. We've had some oopsies. It happens where the chains break and they've come back and scuffed some of the trees. Or somebody's taking a shovel that was with us and didn't, we had to have some help that day because it was gonna rain. We're trying to get them in the ground. Somebody scuffed a little bit. They're still alive. They will repair themselves. I have been known to stick my hand in mud and mud the tree up a little bit too, because I didn't want somebody smelling the fresh green on it. And it worked. So, I mean, no tar, no paint, but I did. I put mud on the tree. So it worked. See anything unusual there? Maybe the mulch is a little bit too high, too deep. Yeah. See where the little fibers of the feeder roots are coming up? That's when you know you get it too deep. And you'll also see some white fungus looking stuff underneath there. That's when you know you got it too deep also. That's when you know all that mulch is actually getting hot and making all those wonderful things underneath there. Water. Strong root systems will produce a better plant that's able to withstand dry periods later. So the amount of water is dependent on your soil type, the rainfall, and the type of species of tree that you actually plant or bush. Your soil moisture can be high, the oxygen may be low, and adding more water can suffocate the plant. So do it on a time scale. I always try to do ours for the city on a Thursday or Friday. You'll see us running around doing it. I'll put 5 gallons on. That's it. That's all they're getting. You can't suck up 5 gallons and you don't live. We don't need you. That's why I said, my full-time guy, he gets ticked with me. He gets ticked with me because we'll plant, I'm like, live or die. And next, live or die. He's like, what? First time I heard, you're rough. I'm like, it's gonna live or it's gonna die. I'm giving it an option. So, but we water about anywhere from 5 to 7 intervals. So like I said, you'll see us water either on Thursday or on Friday. Takes us about a whole day to water. What takes us, we do 50 trees in one day at 5 gallons apiece. So it takes us 2 days to water almost 100 trees. If you're just taking the hose, like I'll see my neighbor and going, shh, that's not doing a thing for your tree at all. If you want to see how much rainfall your tree is getting, get you a coffee can, place it beside your tree. If you're getting about 2 inches a week, come up in that coffee can of rainwater, then it's getting almost sufficient amount of water. But if you've just planted it, I still recommend that 5 gallons every week. And if you've got the right soil, it's gonna percolate in. But you want to make sure that it gets that 5 gallons. You don't want to do the lighting, frequent watering. Grandma does that. I watch her do this with the hose. Yeah. I always go back after her and I take the end off her hose and I soak them down. Yeah, she don't know it. She's gone to bed when I get up there and do it. But if you don't water them like you're supposed to, then that plant will end up with a shallow root system and it'll dry out during prolonged droughts. So you want to make sure you water it well. You want to water it deep. So don't skimp on the water. Go ahead and pay the extra amount for the water.
After it goes dormant, do you need to water that off?
I have, yes, because even in the winter, you will have days where you'll have drought weather. It won't rain for weeks. So keep watering. You're gonna need that water for the first couple of years. So to get those plants established. And if you don't water them when it's cold, they may die also. Remember, staking trees presents additional management challenges in the landscape. Remember, it's not necessary. A lot of people do it, and I think it's just a thing. Wind, soil condition, slope, tree size, risk management issues. Those are all contract stipulations that require tree staking. Use the best management practices that are developed by Miss Bonnie Appleton at State University. Remember, the staking is only temporary. You're not gonna need it forever. Hence the racetrack trees, 4 or 5 years later, still got stuff on them. Homeowners don't return at the end of the first season to remove the ties and the bands, and then it just grows into the trees, and I feel so bad for them. And the tree grows to engulf them, creating a serious flaw in the trunk and the branch structure, and sometimes the tree strangled to death. I've seen that happen. Here we're bulling our tree. Actually, it looks like it's wintertime, so it's not bad. They've got stakes tied to it. Let's see, one here. They've actually added some hose around it. As long as you go back and you check those, it's okay to stake like that. But remember also that whoever's gonna mow that is gonna have to mow around it. And then you'll have little kids, I think that's some park somewhere. You'll have little kids over there playing all around them and doing all kinds of weird things. Yeah, kids are. So I've seen them climb the poles. I've seen them empty the gator bags. Seen them play in the gator bags.
Is that a gator bag?
Yes, that's a gator bag. That tree is it's full of water. It holds water. You can open it here at the top and you can pour the water in it. You can zip it around the tree. And the bottom of it has really small, minute holes, and the water will percolate to the bottom of it. It'll hold about 5 gallons. Or somebody will wing eat your gator bag and it won't hold any water. We've had that happen. So, and they're not cheap. They're about $12.95 a piece the last time we bought some. So, I mean, that's up to you. Yeah.
That's why you use the South Island.
Yeah.
How big are the holes that you drill into the bottom of the?
Pretty small, not, minute small, just small enough to percolate through there. Where they can just drip. You kind of got to explore with it.
I said you don't try to carry that.
No. No, we got a truck. We actually just pour the water in it from the truck, from the water truck. Notice anything what's going on there? Those are like falling off. That's been there for a while also. Somebody needs to take them off. Trunk wrapping. Most tree trunks are wrapped in nurses to prevent bark injury during shipment. I goofed. I realized last week I planted some trees in my yard. Oh, what I was thinking. But they had paper wrapping around the bottom of them, stapled around them. And I left them there. And the other day, which was a year and a half later, I looked at them and I'm like, I did not take the paper off the bottom of them. I don't know what I was thinking. I come back with them. My husband's like, "What'd you take?" I should have took them off when I planted them. I don't know what I was thinking. Now, nothing was wrong with them, because I've been weeding around them and everything else and been able to move the paper, but probably my brain wasn't working. I don't know what happened. But it was made out of some kind of like dog food wrapping paper or something. It had some kind of wax or something on it. It wasn't hurting them anything. A lot of times they put them on there when they first pull them out of the ground to actually keep the trees bark from getting sun scald. And you're supposed to take them off. They actually protect the newly planted trees. Hot sun makes sun scald, frost cracks, unless the trees are planted in areas of high reflected light or heat, such as parking lot islands. This is you remove the wraps after 1 year to prevent insect and disease problems and water damage potential to the trunks. I was there almost a year and a half. And I did that. So, were they good? But yeah, I remember every time I'd weed around them, even though I got straw around them, you're going to get some weeds. I would always, turn them around, move, pick them up, look for them, stick them back down there. I don't know what I was thinking.
You put anti-deer rubbing stuff.
Yeah. Now that's the thing. We do have a problem with that in the city of Clarksville. We got some of the biggest, most enormous deer I've ever seen in my entire life. We planted 25 trees over at Valley Brook Park and went back the next week to water them. And the male deer, of course, it was rut season time, and they had taken their antlers and had ruined 2 or 3 of our trees, just scraped them, but one side down the other, base all the way to the top. So we got to get crafty. So we went down to Lowe's and we got some pipe that comes down from your gutters that you can attach to it, the black pipe. It's got the holes in it. And we cut great big old 8-foot sections and then split it in half. And we put it all around the bottom of the trunks. And that kept the deer from actually messing with them. Because we tried it first. I went to Lowe's and I got some of the deer repelling spray. Have y'all tried that stuff? Oh God, it smells like rotten eggs. And then when I got home, my husband, he goes, "Why do you stink?" And I didn't realize that his wing had come back and got it, and I was all over my clothes. And I wondered if everybody kept moving, And I told my guy, I was like, "Do I smell?" He goes, "Oh yeah." Yeah, so I figured that instead of doing that all the time, that stuff's kind of expensive to spray, and you got to spray it once a week. So we put those guards on, and it works. It keeps the deer from messing with them because they don't like that sound when they start messing with it, the clattering sound, and then they walk off. Because it's not something they can just take those antlers and scrape all that velvet off their heads. So, and then we've done different sizes too. I've done taller ones, I've done smaller ones. You can cut it to whatever length you want, but make sure to check them every now and then because as you're going out there and kind of checking your trees, kind of take them and flip them up and down a little bit. Wear some gloves. They do get spiders in them and snakes. We have flipped them just to make sure they weren't attaching to the tree, and we had a couple of copper heads roll out. They do like to hide in them, but just you gotta decide, whether you want a deer to mess up the tree or you want to fight the copperheads and the widow spiders. So make sure you wear gloves when you flip them around. And we have to have gloves on when we take them off too, because they got all kinds of critters in them. And don't take them in the house either because they got critters in them. Still, leave them outside and let them get the sun get to them and let them sit there for a while. Fertilizing. Always do a soil test to determine the acidity or alkalinity of your soil, what kind of nutrients are in there. Even before you plant the tree, do a soil test. I cannot stress this enough. I've got so many people that call me, I go look at their trees and I'm like, did you do a soil test? Oh, well, I said, soil test. I said, do you know what type of pH this tree needs? So I've got soil test forms, in my truck, and I'll go back and get them one. I'll tell them, get some soil, we're gonna do a soil test, we're gonna send it off. And, most of the time, if there's a tree issue, it's because the soil on the pH is off. That's the first thing we'll look at. And I've got a Killebrew soil tester, it's about $150. I use that to kind of gauge what kind of pH is, and I always tell them it's not perfect. It just kind of gives me an area of what your pH is. But, you'll need to actually send off and have the test done. But, I can kind of tell by actually that Killebrew soil tester if the pH is high or it's too low.
So most ornamental trees are the after-loving ones more sensitive, and other ones, the other ones can tolerate a little more acidic, but the after-loving ones don't like it too alkaline.
It depends on the tree, and you're right, the acid loved ones versus the non-acid loved ones. And say you've got dogwoods like a pH of 7.2 to 7.5. They're funny, Other trees, it depends on the tree, So make sure that, and it should tell you that little plant thing you buy from Lowe's, the pH, I think, doesn't it still? I don't remember, no? I guess you have to look it up. I know it used to give you the roughly the pH. Most ornamental plants grow best when the pH range is between 5 and 7. If you need to, you're gonna, like I said, get soil tests, just either up or down. Should be done in the develop of a new area or landscape bed for a couple months prior to fertilizer application. Do not put any fertilizer on there until you figure out how to fix the pH of your ground. Plants can be over fertilizers, and once you over fertilize them, you can kill them. My dad loved him to death, but he thought if he put one handful of fertilizer on something, he needed to put 2 on there. More is better, it will get bigger. No, Dad, that's not how this works. And we farm, and he's an old vet, and he farmed when he was a kid for his granddaddy, and I guess his granddaddy did the same thing. And I'm like, Dad, that's not how it works. So I've had to teach him not to put so much fertilizer on stuff. He's learning, and he's 86. So you can fertilize established plants. If you're doing a good maintenance program for your trees and your woody plants, I suggest keeping some type of journal or records. We do on what trees I've fertilized, what I've not, which I've pruned, which I've not, because there's hundreds of trees in the city of Clarksville. If you're going to fertilize, use a granular fertilizer. The ideal months are from February through July. I had a lady call me today. She's doing maintenance for the police department. She goes, can I do some fertilizer on them now? Can I cut them back? I'm like, no, don't touch them. Leave them alone. She's like, why? And I said, because you don't want them to get them going and make them have brand new shoots. And I said, and then in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a big freeze and it kills all the shoots on your plant. So let's don't stimulate them right now. Let's let them, it's time to go dormant. The plants are fixing to go to sleep. The trees are fixing to go to sleep. And when you do put the fertilizer on, don't put it around the trunk, put it around the feeder roots, around the outer part of the drip line of your tree or bush. Then water it. A lot of people forget that too. My dad would. He just like, why is it the first one to stick on a tree? And I told him, I said, you gotta water it in, Pop. So just remember tree fertilizer recommendations: early spring, 10-10-10, a rate of 18 pounds per 1,000 square feet when the ground cover is dry. Start the application around the feeder roots and outer part of the trunk. Yeah, 5 feet behind the ends of the branches and the water in. I always remember roughly a 1 pound coffee can holds about 2 pounds of fertilizer. So, do you need that much? It depends on how your tree looks. I could do just a little bit at a time. I won't put the recommended dose on there. I just do a little bit, and then if I need something just a little bit later, I put this a little bit later. But when it gets this fall, I recommend them. You want to broadcast your granular fertilizer, here it shows. There's your root zone to actually be fertilized around the edge. You want the rain to transport the nutrients to the roots. And when you're using this method, make the application late fall, winter, or spring before the new growth begins. Like I said, I don't do them in the fall. I don't recommend doing them in the fall. I do them in the spring, and that's it. Some people are different, I guess. Newly planted ornamentals. I don't do mine, like I said, it's a debate. Some people do, some people don't. Your plant's gonna put on the first year what's spurred on by the carbohydrates and nutrients that's already inside the plant itself. If you buy a healthy plant from a nursery, you're not gonna have to do any type of fertilization for the first year or two. Some people do. I don't. If you do decide you want to do that, make sure that the fertilizer does not come in contact with the roots of the plant. I've seen so many people whenever planting a tree, we pulled up the tree and looked at it. It's like, what's all this? It's fertilizer. Well, I threw it in there, but when I planted the tree, just throw it in the bottom, put the tree on it, and put the dirt on it. No, you can't do that. You'll burn her. So broadcast your fertilizers on the soil service. If you like liquid fertilizers, you can do it as a drench and planting. They'll leach, provide a long-term benefit. They'll come through the soil. If I do plant, or if I do fertilize ours, I'll use Fertilome, which is for the root stimulator only. If I see mine are having a hard time and they're not doing quite what they're supposed to, I don't work on the leaves, I work on the roots. So I'll find me a root fertilizer, something that will stimulate just the roots themselves. It's a really, really weak stimulant for the roots. Kind of gets the roots established, gets the tree back in good health. I've got two now that are looking kind of strange over by one of the banks that we planted and are sending up all kinds of weird shoots. So I think this winter I'm going to work on the roots on it. If it's really weak, we apply it every 2 weeks and dilute it and get those roots established a little bit better than what they were. And I think part of the problem was the fact that we went through the horrible December winter, and then we had the drought twice, and we watered it every week. So sometimes you can water them, and take care of them, and they still will exhibit signs of stress. So plus it's a street tree. Anytime you put a tree in a sidewalk and heat it up to 120 some odd degrees during the day, they're not going to do that great. It's a gamble. So. Remember to always take off your tags or your labels when you plant a tree. We kind of did this once or twice too. I went back to the golf course the other day and I found some labels still on the trees. We planted them in January. I don't know what happened there. I thought we got them all. I guess, we didn't. There were still some labels on there that told what kind of trees they were. Water newly planted trees in the root zone thoroughly once a week. Container grown trees may be susceptible to drought stress once they're planted in the landscape. A lot of people plant them, walk away, forget them, keep them watered. Has anybody ever actually seen the media that comes in the containers with the plant? It's really dry. You can't get it where it holds water like it's supposed to. It's really it loses moisture really, really fast. That's why I've got a couple around at the shop that I'll water. Next day they need more water again. So I've got a couple that need to go on the ground quick because I keep watering them. I'm tired of watering because that media that's planted them in that comes from the nursery, it gets dry quick. Most newly planted trees and shrubs show no shoot growth during the first year or two, and they're working on root systems. So if you don't see anything coming out of your tree, and it's still putting on leaves and everything in the spring and summer, don't fret. It's okay. It's still making leaves. It's still okay. It's just working on taking care of the roots to start with. You got good roots, you got a good tree. If you don't have good roots, your tree's gonna die. Here's two different types of tree water bags. Now, I like the one on the bottom. I call it a little donut. The one on the top, like I said, boils the bark on them. They're about the same price. This one's easier to put water in than this one. This one, you gotta have a hose sticking through it. And good luck trying to get the water going to it like it's supposed to. They'll both drain slowly, and they'll take about 5 gallons of water. But I like the ones on the bottom. If you really want to put a tree water bag on it, I recommend the one on the bottom. You'll have to order them. I don't see too many sold, at Rural King or anywhere else. Pruning. So why do we want to prune a tree? Anybody know?
Stimulate growth.
Stimulate growth. What else?
On a certain shape,
Certain shape.
you want a certain way to prune it to get.
Mhm.
For the space it's in.
Can.
Disease.
Yep, help prevent disease. Help crisscrossing the branches, maybe enough sunlight in the inside. Airflow. Anybody ever look at a lot of those trees that were down at the golf course? I noticed one thing. I noticed. They were really thick. They needed to be pruned. The crown needed to be pruned so the airflow could go through them. I don't think half of them would have been blown over if the air could have got through them like it was supposed to. The wind would have went through them instead of just hitting one side of them and just throwing them over. If they had been done right when they were small, of course, that wasn't on my watch, then they'd been fine. But you want to maintain your healthy, vigorous plants. You want them to the shape and size that you want them. You want to maintain them, their plant health. You want to get rid of the dead, the damaged, or disease. I call them the 3 Ds. Improve the appearance of the plant by training to a particular shape or size, and pruning can increase the density of plant. Or you'll get sometimes you'll look at a tree and you'll be like, what is going on with this tree? It looks weird. It'll have more branches here, less branches here. We had a tree last week, I think I looked at, and I must walk around that tree for 10 minutes. And my full-time guy standing with saw like this, waiting on me because he knows he's got to wait. And I told him, I was like, we don't need this one. So I start getting underneath it and I start making the cuts. And I'll get there and I will sit there and I'll look at it again. You ain't got to hurry when you're doing it. I've had a tree take me an hour and 45 minutes to figure out how to prune it. But it was so, it wasn't done correctly to start with, or had never been done before I got to be city forester. And I'm just trying to fix it to where it kind of goes back to its natural form. And you're trying to train it to do what it's supposed to do. You can actually train a tree to grow up over buildings or away from awnings and stuff like that. You don't have to just take something and just cut the whole branch off. You can do what's I call canopy cleaning to kind of take some of the weight off the canopy. And if you take a little bit of time, you can start to see that canopy go up. We have to do it so people can walk under it, people can ride bikes under their parks. I know some of the guys just go through and they just start cutting off the ends. You don't have to cut off the ends. That's incorrect pruning. There are different ways you can prune a tree. You want to take it off at the node. And you want to find one, I said, that keeps that tree going up instead of makes that tree go down. You want to move the branches that are misshapen, crowded, rubbing together or drooping onto the other branches for support. I looked at a pin oak the other day, and I mean, it was like this, and nobody had pruned it. And then when somebody did prune it, they had cut all the bottom ones close up underneath it and kind of left stubs sticking out like this. And I was like, I don't know who did this tree. Apparently, I'm not educated enough. And you want to remove the branches with narrow crotch angles or branches that cross over each other. That was this tree's particular problem. If you don't do it like you're supposed to, then you'll have damage occur. And when the wind actually starts moving those branches and rubbing them together, it'll cause the bark to actually split open. And that's when you end up with disease or some type of bug or pest. And if you're doing orchard trees, you want to prune them to stimulate flowering or fruiting. They produce more flower buds. The season of old flowers are moved, and when they lose their attractiveness. So you commonly call it deadheading. So.
What is it? Angle? Narrow crotch.
I think that's coming up. Hold on. Yeah, hold on. So the first step, remove all your dead, dying, and diseased. I call them the 5 Ds: dying, dead, deformed, damaged, and diseased. and go slow. Don't get in a hurry. Then you got the 5 C's that you want to look for, which are your cankers, your cones, cracks, cavities, and your crotches on your tree. Take any of the cross branches or branches rubbing against each other, and a branch can be removed and cut back to the origin to a side branch that's at least 1/2 its size. I had one tree the other day, it had a central leader in it, and then they had a branch coming out and it was going this far and it was about this higher than the central leader. So I cut this one back to right about here, so this could still stay the central leader. And you can do that and it works. So correct location of the cut is outside the swollen area known as the branch collar. Just start through here. Don't leave stubs. This is a stub. This stub, if you leave it sitting there, it will start to decay, it'll start sucking in water, and it will ruin your trees. Then once it's wet, you'll get insects, you'll get decay, and your tree will eventually rot and die because it will end up all down through here into the bark. So if you want to do it, let's do it right. Don't leave stubs. Here's your proper pruning techniques. This is your branch bark ridge. This is where you'll make your cut. On this side, see where that little ring is? You can see one on every single tree if you go down to a park or something. Kind of looks like a ring, like your wedding ring on your finger. You'll want to stay over to the top of that. That's where you'll want to stay. And if you do it right, you'll end up with, the right looking, this is too close. That's this guy, whoever did this one, actually got into the wood of the tree, into the bark on it, and did it incorrectly. And you'll see where this is actually split because it hasn't come around. This will actually start, if it's done right, that wound wood will actually come over and cover that. And what you'll eventually see when it's done right, it looks like a donut on a tree when it's done right. If you do improper pruning, you can tear your branch. Show one up, yeah. So what you're wanting to go back. Do your cuts on a 3-cut method. The first cut will be underneath here. I always kind of do a little bit different. I always take the weight of the branch off itself, and then I'll have this nub. And then I'll come underneath here and I'll do an undercut. Then I'll do my overcut, because if you don't do the undercut, when you cut on the top of this, that whole thing will peel, and it'll peel all the way down into this trunk of this tree, and you don't want it to peel. So always do your little undercut before you actually take off the branch. And that way, that limb, I'll always cut off before I'll do that. And it should be a very smooth cut. Shouldn't be jagged or anything else. That's your 3-cut method.
So is the third cut underneath 2 or 2?
To do it correctly, you'll do 1, 2, and then cut the whole thing off. But as long as you've got an undercut, I'll cut the weight off of mine. So if this branch was this tall, I'll cut the weight off here. And then I'll go back to this picture and I'll cut under and over and then my 3rd cut. That way you don't end up with the weight of your limb actually pulling your branch up into your trunk. We got about 20 more slides. We're gonna take a break. We good? It's up to y'all. Okay, take a break. 10, 15, where y'all want it? We can talk.
Okay, so
It's fun. Be able to stand up straight.
the next one.
Like this, head toward your house.
Yeah, right.
The other house is
They'll have a- where it is.
the last three times they had contract. To the federal tree, and the lady called me, it was bad. They cut half the tree up, and she went out there and it was like they cut all the trees off the side, they transferred the weight toward her house. You know, and I'm thinking the whole thing's gonna blow over our house. So I called CDE and I'm like, look, y'all are free line certified USA. I said, you will have your license, both you do your certification, don't fix it free. I said, come take the whole thing out. And so they had to go out there and take the whole tree. But, you know, that's just setting their house up at the park at that point. Because then you're gonna get wind, it's gonna hit that tree when it goes to the leaves. And I call that a full sail because it looks like a sail on a ship and it just goes that way.
Well, and
You can't do that.
another state where I was a master gardener, after Taiwan, they took to nursery areas for all. Not even. Like for the dollar store, I was bought it, that would be like a common area. Where here, like, even when we live, there's that mention, like, in this space, there is a back off.
Saying they're using like green space, it counts toward their green space.
Yeah,
You can do that.
you can't build, they don't, owning unless you like it with an acre.
But my question is then who's gonna take care of the green space on the lines? They can take care of it. Homeowner beside it and what kind of rats must take them?
Like nursery, then they'll have this. Nursery, like orchard, there's. Land.
Right. And eventually, what they'll do is they'll come back and just spray line on that. And keep that vegetation down, so it can be more manageable, and run over a mower or something over the top of it. Some little weeds, like, enough of. Yeah.
In February, we had a coach meeting.
There isn't. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine, then there.
February first. Then I had a couple more calls. So we're waiting for the phone. Yeah, But even though there's a lot of people that, will chop the tree up, and they call it their beer pit.
Beer pit?
Yeah, their beer pit behind their house. It's a beer wood. Like, you make their beer, they got little stumps and everything.
Yeah.
They have a little beer pit.
Like trees and stuff. See if there's any trees that.
Well, you can call me or you can call us. Come on. Mail or call me, and then I'll call you back, and I'll look at my calendar, and I stick it my day, and you and I can actually sit and look at them.
So you didn't know. We're concerned of any of the
Big tree down there that, we've already had it involved. Lighting farm, if there are others that are at risk.
Right,
Yeah.
you're just looking at for health and welfare, yeah, I do that all the time. Now, pretty far from the creek.
Well, I guess it would be the house. They get down, it's probably just so.
Yeah. Yeah, just look at some of the leaves before the leaves come off. Can't really tell anything, pretty little no leaves on it. Yeah. Do it all the time. Matter of fact, I finally got done with all my house calls today, so I'm expecting that 25 by tomorrow. I'm used to it. We just call that number and schedule it. I'll have our admin, the city, I'm hardly ever in my office, so she takes all my phone calls and she'll take work order and thing. I'll call the homeowner back and say, hey, what day do you want me to come over and look at it?
I'm sure you're gonna get to one from. You're trying to make one of the times, you're coming up to say one.
Okay. I almost forgot about our Zoom.
Uh-oh.
Zoom folks. Have any questions? Uh-oh. What we do? Somebody couldn't hear.
Uh-oh.
Yvonne, can you hear now? Hello, hello?
Maybe it was just hers.
Yeah. Carry on.
Carry on.
Okay, break time. Yep. All right. Get ready to start again, y'all. Okay.
Am I ready? Yeah. Oh, now it goes. Okay, we talked about the 3-cut method on how to remove a limb. Your cut should be made just outside your branch collar to make sure that your tree you don't get too far deep into your tree, to the trunk of your tree. If you don't do it correctly, or if you don't do it all, you end up with codominant stems. And you'll get some of the branch that will be included. I always say this looks like a tree, and something like this always ends up looking like a bush. So bushes often fail more than what really good trees do that have strong permanent scaffold branches. These guys right here, they'll end up sometimes with a snow load on them or an ice load on them, and you'll see them start ripping and tearing apart. I've come across trees, and a lot of times they'll have 2 great big huge branches, and they'll stand for years. And then you'll have a wind event or something like that, and it'll just rip one of them off and leave the other guy standing. Of course, if y'all have ever noticed, when you get 2 trees like this, you get 2 different canopies. So when one of them ends up like this gone, you'll end up this canopy and it's all headed this way. So what eventually is going to happen is the wind's going to hit it and actually throw that one the opposite way too. So make sure that you do proper pruning techniques to start with, and prune for this look. You want that strong,
good looking scaffold all the way around the tree where everything is like it's supposed to be. Spacing about 12 to 18 inches apart and make it look like a real tree instead of a bush. Proper pruning techniques. The International Society of Arboriculture's Arborist Certification Study Guide states topping or heading back is not a recommended pruning method for trees. Crown reduction and drop crotch pruning are the terms used by certified arborists. Topping or heading back, I heard another one the other day, rounding. Don't let somebody talk to you rounding your tree. That's bad too. It's the same thing. It's just different terminology. I was talking to a gentleman the other day. He was wanting to get out of the tree cutting business, and he did an interview with us because I'm trying to hire another full-time guy. And I asked him, I said, "So, what kind of pruning do you do?" And he said, "You know, the usual stuff." And I said, "What is that?" And he said, "Well, I round trees or I'll head them back." And I was like, "So, are you arborist certified?" He's like, "Yeah." He said, "I'm one of the few arborists." And I was like, "But if you're topping and rounding up the trees, how, you know, that's against your arborist certification." And he kind of like, I told, because we're 6 of us doing an interview on him, I was like, "We ain't hiring him." So if he's doing it here, he's gonna do it for us. I don't want no part of it. Make sure you know how to actually do your trees like you're supposed to. And if you're not sure, go to the ISA certification site and plug in somebody's name that you're not sure about, and it will tell you if that person is ISA certified. I'm arbor certified, Carla's arbor certified, and I think there's one more person besides him in town that was arbor certified. You don't find very many of them. International Society of Arborists. So you can get your arborist certification there. It's a hard test. I'm gonna tell you, I failed the first time. I'll be honest. But they didn't tell me there was like 7 or 8 little books that went with that book right there. And so they want to know, I know about cabling and bracing and some other things. I'm like, that wasn't bad. But that's the only one they send you. They didn't tell you about that little 6 books on the side. So they should read them. They're in there. You'll have to order those separate. When you top a tree, it's called improper pruning techniques. You're cutting back your branches to stubs or lateral branches. And what happens is you'll get these new shoots that will actually develop below where you've topped it and just gone straight across it. Stems from those don't generally make it. They generally die. They're all weakly attached. They're all trying to get the most amount of nutrients, the most amount of water. And they're a hazard. And you'll see, what kills me is you'll see somebody that get the trees top. And if you go past their yard in the spring or late summer, you'll see this stack of twigs. and right there at the base of their tree where they've picked up all these shoots that have come off and died from these trees where they've had them topped. So, you know, if you see that much wood sitting around a tree, you know it's not good for the tree. So, you know, don't make it where, you know, those shoots are left. Now, I did learn something. I'm part of the storm mitigation for the state, where we do the hazards for like tornadoes and stuff like that, hurricanes. Still getting trained, by the way. There was a gentleman in Alabama. He was a forester. I can't remember what part of Alabama, what city it was, but the hurricane hit them pretty bad and ruined every single one of their big trees. I mean, FEMA was wanting to go ahead and take them down. And he's like, "Look, this is all we've got. You know, we don't have anything else. This is the only trees left on the street." Tore the tops out of them, tore the branches off of them. All he had was a viable trunk with some halfway sticking stubs up. And so he went through and he actually pruned, did a lot of lateral prunes on them to try to save them. And they came back out. And he ended up with a lot of shoots, but he had the crew big enough where they went through and picked several shoots to make new branches. And you can do that. You can take and you can make this a viable branch, but you're going to have to get rid of the rest of these. And then that tree can actually grow and catch up. But he didn't want to get rid of the trees because there was nothing else left to mitigate the storm water for the city. And he thought maybe if he fixed those trees and made them grow back like they were supposed to, they would be fine. Because they had a great root structure, great flare structure. They were solidly in the ground. They were good street trees. And he did not want, you know, larger tree soaks up more stormwater than a smaller tree does. So he made it a point to save them, and they're there today and they look good. So he did the right thing.
We didn't say top.
They actually got pulled over by a hurricane. All the branches got pulled out of them. So he went through and he fixed them instead of letting FEMA take them and take them down. But they're still there today. I had a crepe myrtle, I'll give you for an instance, that died in our yard in December after that big storm, the cold snap, that we dropped 34 degrees in 1 hour. And it killed Grandma's crepe myrtle to about, it was pretty tall, about 7 or 8 foot tall, and it killed it right about there. And the only thing I did was I went through and I laterally pruned each one of them. And what I did, I had all kinds of these guys come out. So I picked 1 or 2 off of those and I let that tree come back out. And I'm playing with it, you know, pulling some of the branches back to actually make that tree grow back because she wants to kind of look like trees, the crepe myrtles. So, and I'm working with it, trying to get it back to the way it was to come out and do the unbending. Is it working? It's working. It's just gonna take time to get that tree back the way it's supposed to. So don't think, you know, if you got a storm damaged tree, that you got to remove the whole thing. As long as it's a viable tree, it's got great roots, great flare, it's still in the ground, even though it, you know, is tornado ravaged or whatever, you could probably still fix it if you get the right tree company out there to fix it for you. So. You can do a heading. This is on bushes only. They're just above the nodes. Say if you got a forsythia bush, I think that's what that right there is. My mom had one in the front yard, and I mean, that forsythia bush, you know how they grow. They grow everywhere. And I told her, I said, well, let me kind of cut it. And she said, you know, but I told her, I said, I got it. I'll show you how to do it. And I went through and I trimmed up her bush, and it kind of looks like this. But you want to do it to encourage the shoots to actually grow outward. Some of the buds that faced inwards, I kind of turned them around where it will come out like it's supposed to instead of crossing. And now she's got a great forsythia bush. She's like, how long will that last? I said, well, we got to prune it every year. She didn't kind of like that, but you can make it heading cuts and fix some of your bushes. It's not topping. Or you can go through like this forsythia here, and you can select some of the ones that you want to take out. Say this is like too thick and you're not getting enough airflow through it. It happens to forsythia, spirea, willigilias, nandinas. I did some nandinas for Grandma the other day. She thought I was going to kill them. And I told her, I said, you know, just go through and kind of take out some of the canes in her nandinias. It was too thick and it was starting to decay and rot in certain places. And parts of the bottom down here had started to decay because there was too many canes and the water was pooling back in the middle of these canes. So I just kind of went through and I thinned those out for her. Looks a lot better. It's been 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. And she's like, well, she said, you didn't kill it after all. Really? You can do a severe renewal pruning. I have done this. It was a butterfly bush. It was in the way. I really didn't want it. And I cut it all down. And I ran over it with a lawnmower. And I'll be doggone if the thing didn't come out look better than before. So I left it, and it looks great, buttering, you know, because it was just, I mean, just thick, and it was all jagged, doing all kinds of weird stuff. And I took it down. My husband was like, "Why did you do that? I can't believe you did that." But I ran over 2 or 3 times with a lawnmower. I thought I was going to kill it, and then it come out looking really great. So I left it. It's about this high right now, and I've gone through and kind of pruned. It was a little bit thick, kind of like this. So I went through and pruned out some of this, and it came out looking really, really good. So you can do some what I call severe renewal pruning and cut them almost to the ground. It's already got an established root system. It's not going to kill it. And they really do grow better than what they were. Shearing, for you guys that like those manicure gardens and you want that commitment to those rigid and timed pruning schedules, you can actually shear their plants when they're young, and this needs to be done several times a year, such as your evergreens, yews, abreverte, hemlocks, boxwoods, if you want more of that formal look. One of the ladies at the police department called me earlier today, and she was wanting to know, can she go through and trim all the boxwoods at the police department? I'm like, no, I said, you can kind of clip them down just a little bit. She wanted to I'm like, don't do it because they'll end up with little shoots at the very end of it. And I said, when those shoots come out, the frost hit them in the next couple of weeks, this is gonna kill your whole boxwood. I said, so very little, that will do a whole lot for them. She wanted to do the rose bushes too, and I'm like, no, that's rose bushes. That's February. And when to prune, like I said, timing is for most plants. Plant has to have its energy reserves during the dormant period of winter. And if your plants are pruned during the action weeks of spring, they may draw diminished reserves to replace part of the lost growth until pruning wounds. Late summer, early fall are 4 times to prune because it's encouraging new growth, but it will not mature sufficiently to withstand winter freeze and may be damaged by frost. Do not prune when temperatures are below 20 degrees either. My boss asked me one day, "Aren't you supposed to be out pruning? It's 15 degrees. We don't prune it below 20 degrees. What do y'all do then?" I go, "Well, we'll find something to do. We can't prune trees below that." We also don't prune them when it's very, very a drought and they haven't had water. We don't.
Day or night?
That's day temperature. I don't prune them in the 20-degree period or high drought. I won't prune them because I think our trees stay stressed enough with the climate that we've now gotten. Because we had 2 droughts last year and then we had the December freeze. So we've already got stress freeze all over Clarksville. They're working on trying to get used to the new climate that we've got. I've been here since '66 and the climate has changed. I'm telling you, it's different than what it was when I was growing up. We used to have snow. We used to have a real winter. We used to have a real spring. Now it's just like whatever. You know, December, we're having 75 and 80-degree temperatures. You know, we didn't have all that. So, you know, is it something that man's done? I don't know, but our climate has changed. Best time to prune is late winter, early spring before the buds swell and open. We like to really get trees pruned when they're dormant. So when you see all the leaves go off the trees in the fall, you're going to see us out all over the place. We're going to be cleaning up all these trees and pruning them.
Okay.
Yes.
They put fruit trees?
No.
Late winter?
No. Fruit trees you want to prune last February, 1st of March, I think is what it is. That's why I do. That's why I do mine.
Last February.
Mm-hmm. Roses I do in February. Last 2 weeks of February I do roses, and I start on my fruit trees. And I'll do them till about the 2nd week of March, and then that's it. I won't touch them again. When you'll have less possibility of freeze damage. Sometimes you can, and make sure you pay attention to the weather. If you go to prune a tree and you're going to prune it tomorrow, and the next day it's going to be 20 degrees. Well, when you prune that tree, you've submitted all those cells to open air, and they'll expand and contract with the weather, and they can actually burst, or you'll end up with decay in your tree. So make sure you plan for the weather also. Do it when you know it's going to be a solid temperature for a couple of days, and you're not going to have any type of variation. And sometimes you can produce and reduce the amount of flowering on spring flowering shrubs, but that may be necessary to maintain desired growth. Spring flowering shrubs, forsythia, stuff like that, you can kind of go through and kind of prune them as needed. I don't think it's too awful bad on those. Remember, if you're pruning birch, elm, maple, and yellowwood in late winter, they're bleeders. Everybody knows the sap starts coming up in a tree roughly about January. And if we were out, I forgot about this one tree. It was maple, it was a sugar maple. And my guy pruned it, and all of a sudden I feel something on my head, and the tree's just dripping sap. You know, it was actually delicious. We drank some of it, but he thinks I'm crazy. I'm sure my mouth open.
Country with it?
It's sugar maple, and it was dripping sap. Trees and shrubs should be examined for pruning on an annual basis, but remember that, you know, sap starts coming up in January, and that's when you should kind of maybe not do as much pruning for some of those bleeder trees. And it'll stain the bark. To ensure proper plant response after pruning, be aware of the flowering and fruiting habits of your plants. Plants that flower before July 1 should be pruned immediately after flower. Those are your azaleas, your forsythias, your lilacs, and your verbeniums. And these plants also develop flower buds in the previous season's wood. Remember that. Pruning in July will promote shoot growth and allow time for the flower buds to develop for next year. I caught grandma out with a pair of shears the other day trying to do the, what are them stupid? Hydrangeas. I'm like, don't you touch those. She said, I always cut them back. I said, that's why you can't get them to do what they're supposed to. Leave them alone. She says, I'm bossy. Plants that bloom after July 1 should be pruned in late winter or early spring before growth starts. Crepe myrtle, rose of Sharon, butterfly bushes, and some hydrangeas. Fruiting shrubs are prized for their fruiting, can be pruned until after the fruiting has lost its beauty. That's on an as-needed basis also. Picantha, holly, barberry, cotton easter, and nandinias. Actually I pruned hazelwoods. I've got some hazelnut trees. And they kind of look like shrubs, but I didn't let them do the tree thing. I just left them in shrubs. And I regretted that now. So I've been trying to go through and lightly thin those branches and try to get it more to something I can deal with. Because it lost its mind. Conifers, broadleaf and narrowleaf evergreens may be pruned at any time the wood is not frozen. And they're primarily pruned to increase the density of the foliage or reduce the size of the plant. And you only want to remove 1/2 the length of the candle in the spring when it's about 2 inches long. Just want to go easy on the pines and the spruces. Young trees maybe need to be pruned back to maintain a central leader. Like I said, I really don't prune ours till about the 2nd or 3rd year. Make sure the cuts are at a node or back to the next limb. Do not remove more than 1/3 of the living branches. So if you're ever pruning a tree and it looks rough, we've had this happen. We've found out we're always end up with city property. I don't know how we end up with it. We'll have city property that we never even knew we had. And we'll run into it and they'll have a tree on it and we'll have to end up pruning it. And I have to go back 2 or 3 times because I can't remove more than 1/3 of the tree at a time because it'll kill it. So I have to do very lightly pruning in stages. And like I said, I've got a running sheet on when I did it, how I did it, how much I did. And it's just a lot to it. But you want to develop a really straight trunk, essential leader, start earning the life of the tree, remove the branches. You can prune also mature trees. You want to maintain your tree structure, form, health, and appearance. If you're not sure, discuss it with an arborist or a trained professional and get the most desired method of pruning before the work is done. If you can't find one, call Carter or me and we'll find you somebody. You know, if we can't show you how to do it. It's easy. It's not hard. It's not rocket science. Pruning is simple. You have to have patience when you're doing it. And sometimes you can't do it all in one time. And sometimes, you have to leave stuff and wait for it to grow and do some more later. I had one tree that was pruned. Somebody pruned it. I don't know what happened to it. But all the scaffolding branches weren't 8 or 12 inches apart, and they had kind of done too much on this side and too much of that side. So I noticed the tree was starting to come out in certain parts where they had cut these off. So I actually went through and I'm making new branches for this tree. So you can actually do that and make new branches with the new growth that's actually coming out.
Sanitary pruning all the time?
What's that?
Sanitary pruning.
Yes. I make sure you can use a bottle of Lysol. I like that method the best. Get your pruning shears, and after you do each tree, just spray some Lysol on them or wipe them down. Because you don't know what this tree may have versus what that tree does. So I recommend before you go from each tree to actually sanitize whatever it is you're using to prune that tree with.
Okay, work.
Huh?
So can you use the bucket of Lysol? Kind of dip it in it?
Yeah, you can do that. If you want to keep doing this.
Alcohol, that's what I use.
You can use alcohol, you can use Lysol, hydrogen peroxide, just wipe off your blade and then just keep going from tree to tree. Anything that will actually sanitize your blade. So, but remember when you're doing your sanitizing to whatever pruners that you're using, it's going to eat the oil off your pruners. And we've had this happen and it's going to discolor your blades. So later on, you need to pull your blades and everything. and take a piece of, Scotch-Brite and actually go in there and kind of clean them all up, get all the gunk and everything off of them, and then make sure to re-oil everything that you got. That way your printers work like they're supposed to. Topping. This is a fad around Clarksville that Carl and I absolutely hate. I wish I could send whoever's doing it back to whatever state they got it from. And it seems like it catches on wildfire. You'll see one neighbor doing it, and then the whole freaking neighborhood does it. And I'm trying to figure out how everybody buy into this when they know it's gonna make your trees die. They want the height reduced, and honestly, I understand, people get scared of trees. And after the last couple of big storms that we've had, where people have had trees next to their houses, people have what I call dendrophobia, fear of trees. And they call somebody and they want their trees cut back. You can cut the tree back if you do it correctly. I don't recommend topping any tree, rounding any tree, flush cutting any tree. You're disfiguring it, you're ruining it for life. It'll shorten the life of your tree. You can do one like this, and I'd say anywhere from 5 and 10 years, it's gonna start dying. I'm sorry. It's gonna start to decay, it's gonna suck water. If it lives past 10 years, I'm really surprised. So it's not a very good practice, at all. And do not let any tree company tell you that it's a good practice, because it's not. They are liars from the pits of hell. I promise you, it makes me so mad. And the reason it makes me mad, I had a lady, she was on a retired income. Her and her husband were, they had moved from Germany. He was in the military, had settled in Clarksville, been here almost 50 years. Bought a house out towards 41A or Fort Crumb Boulevard. Planted some trees when they first got in the house. And some guy came through tree company and told them that their trees needed to be topped because they were hanging over her house. She bought into it, they topped her trees. And she called me years later, and I went over and looked at them, and all I can do is just kind of stand there, and I'm thinking, I gotta tell this lady that her trees are dying, because they were starting to drop branches and everything else, and they were decaying, falling apart. They were on a limited income and had no money to remove those trees, because I think there was 10 trees, 8 or 10 trees around the house, but it was gonna cost them almost $12,000. And they were on a retired income and that was it. Social Security, and a tree company running for them, So don't let somebody talk you into doing something that, is not gonna be good for a tree. That's too much and too drastic. And trees, we don't go out into the forest and top trees, so why are we doing in our neighborhoods? It's the worst thing you can do to a tree. Call Carl and I if you're not certain. We can find out somebody that does good work, and we'll we can't recommend them as city state employees, but we can as citizens, and we know the right people that you can call to get this done, and they'll do it correctly. But don't top. You can do a crown reduction and crown raising. The one on the left is what CDE does. Is they'll go through and do a crown reduction to get them out the lines. You should also do a crown raising is what we do, because all these tree limbs will come down to the ground, and of course people walk underneath them in parks and stuff, and they'll complain about, I poked my eye out, or I was riding a bicycle and one stabbed me in my head. So we have to go through and we'll prune this 33% right here and kind of get this tree up where it belongs, so people can actually walk underneath it. That won't hurt it. Like I said, selecting an arborist, look for membership in professional organizations such as the International Society of Arboriculture, the ISA, and the National Arborist Association. Membership does not guarantee quality, but does indicate a commitment to the profession. Carl and I are committed to the profession. We will not find us misusing or tearing up a tree. We want to preserve the quality of our trees for the city of Clarksville and for the county. So don't top your tree. Any questions?
Are you on the tree board?
I am a liaison on the tree board. Go ahead. What's the purpose of the tree
of the
board?
tree board?
Carla's our chair for the tree
On the
board.
tree board?
I'm a chair.
protect and maintain or to replace.
For our city. And
Educational outreach regarding trees. We try to advocate for trees.
Right.
There is a tree ordinance for the city of Clarksville. Stuff behind them. I have. Oh. Yeah. Right now, we do not have any place, any type of ordinance to protect large trees or champion trees or trees that want to be preserved on property. We have addressed that. We've had a couple here lately that have come up like that. The Dunlop Mansion, they're wanting to preserve that tree. The ginkgo, it's, I don't know how many, couple hundred years old maybe. It's a monster. Yeah. There are a lot of monster trees in Clarksville that y'all don't know exist. They're monsters. I measured one the other day over in Sherwood Forest. It was 56 inches in diameter, around 132 foot tall.
Who knows these specifics?
It was an oak. It was a red oak. It was a monster.
Do we need a law to protect grand trees?
Yeah.
Yes.
And who would make?
Well, it's not just us.
Yeah.
It's, we have one. Commission.
Jack Reynolds.
Yes.
Trees are protected and you could not basically touch them and.
But
one
you
of them
have to
did.
have elected officials.
Yeah, that's correct. It's not protected.
Right.
And, Johnny updated and the American chestnut, the one that's come back out.
I haven't heard from the state. Have you, Carla?
No, they're still doing
Yeah. Yeah,
It's kind of like. And they do really do it.
I know most of these set 20 or 30 out on the farm, and that was 10 years ago. I haven't heard how they're doing. I have to reach out and find out. Call Chad out there. He's over the farm and see if they're still living chestnut trees. I haven't heard from them lately. So,
We actually do a pre-inventory the next year. And so that will give councilors an idea of what. We have. And.
what species we have the most of, what species we have the rest of, how to pick, more different trees to go in, to our city. Because we don't want to wind up like some of the cities up north that planted the same thing over and over and over again. And, they were raised by a different type of, disease and pests. They had to end up cutting them down, like emerald ash borer. Too many ash trees. They planted them all over the streets. What was that? It was, I don't know, they ended up spending millions of dollars removing those trees. So is the emerald ash borer here? He's somewhere. But we don't, yeah. We haven't caught him yet, haven't seen if, yeah, we've set out traps, we've been avidly looking for him. But so far I have not seen one.
Non-native pest that can be here.
Yep. That's why we advocate for not moving firewood. If you go camping, use the firewood in that area. Don't take the firewood that you have at your house to the camping area. If you don't move firewood, then you don't move the pests in it to different locations and actually spread the, whatever disease or pests. So, it's, I would like to, I was talking to one of the council persons not long ago. She said, I believe there should be a tree in every yard. I do too. But then again, you have people who don't like trees in their yard. I had a lady, she cut down all the trees in her yard, and every time that she calls me, it's because the leaves in her neighbor's yard are blowing in her yard, and she wants me to have her tree removed. She just doesn't like trees. She doesn't like the mess. So, I mean, you'll get all different types of people. People that love trees, people that hate trees. It depends. But when people say they don't like trees, and they're like, what is that? And I'm like, you like breathing? Well, yeah. I said, it's important, isn't it? I said, you ever hold your breath before and not been able to breathe? Well, yeah. I was like, well, if you don't have trees, you're not going to be able to breathe. So, that always kind of changes people's minds. So, do they take care? Yes. Code sends me on lots. I went on 3 crews today that were dead and dying in people's yards. If you buy a piece of property,